What if the spare change in your pocket was worth thousands? In this thrilling episode, we uncover 4 rare U.S. coins hiding in plain sight. From the 1985 Lincoln penny shocking mint error to the mysterious 1979 Jefferson nickel, the unexpected twist in the 1982 Roosevelt dime, and the valuable flaw in the 1994 Washington quarter, each tells a gripping story of history, accident, and rising value. These coins turned everyday finds into collector treasures. Stay with us as we reveal how tiny mistakes created big fortunes, starting with the unforgettable tale of the 1985 Lincoln 1-cent penny. The year 1985 was pivotal for U.S. coinage, with the Denver Mint producing billions of Lincoln cents to meet the growing demand for everyday transactions. These 1-cent coins bore the iconic design of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The coins were struck primarily in zinc with a thin copper plating, a composition adopted in 1982 to address rising metal costs. While the minting process was streamlined to ensure precision, the sheer volume of production occasionally led to anomalies. One such anomaly from 1985 would later capture the attention of collectors and numismatists alike. Decades passed before the significance of this particular 1985 Lincoln cent began to surface. In the late 1990s, a seasoned collector named Jonathan Reed stumbled upon an unassuming coin during a routine inspection of his accumulated change. Something about its surface caught his eye. The coin seemed slightly thicker, and its edges displayed an uneven appearance. Intrigued, Jonathan magnified the coin under his loupe. He noticed faint doubling on the word Liberty, and the date, 1985. Even more peculiar, the reverse showed a partially obscure design, as if the Lincoln Memorial were shadowed by a ghostly double strike. Curiosity turned into obsession. Jonathan sought the opinion of a local numismatics expert, who confirmed his suspicions. This was no ordinary penny. The coin exhibited a rare minting error caused by a misaligned die and a double die strike. These errors were incredibly scarce, especially on Lincoln cents from the 1980s, as quality control measures had improved significantly. The discovery left Jonathan with more questions than answers. How many of these coins could exist? Was this an isolated mishap, or did a series of flawed coins escape the mint unnoticed? The journey to uncover the coin's history was not straightforward. Jonathan scoured auction archives, attended coin shows, and engaged with online collector forums. Initial valuations were modest, as the rarity of the 1985 error coin was yet to be fully understood. But as more collectors recognized its unique features, the narrative began to shift. Reports of similar coins began to trickle in, each showcasing variations of the same error. Some had dramatic doubling, while others exhibited subtle misalignments. Together, these discoveries painted a picture of a rare and fascinating chapter in the history of U.S. coinage. The coin's value began to climb steadily. In the early 2000s, a specimen in near-perfect condition sold for $5,000 at a regional auction. By 2010, as awareness grew and the coin became a sought-after prize among enthusiasts, prices exceeded $20,000 for coins in mint state. The rarity of the error, combined with its striking visual characteristics, elevated it to a status comparable to other legendary error coins. Yet, the true peak of its value was still on the horizon. Jonathan's coin remained at the center of his collection, and he often displayed it at conventions to share its story with fellow enthusiasts. It became a symbol of the thrill of discovery, a reminder that even the smallest and most overlooked pieces of history can hold extraordinary secrets. As collectors and historians delved deeper into the anomaly, a surprising twist emerged. Metallurgical analysis revealed a slight inconsistency in the coin's copper plating, suggesting that a batch of planchets with varying thickness had been used during production. This revelation added another layer of intrigue, as it implied that the error was not merely mechanical but also tied to the materials used during a specific production run. The enduring appeal of the 1985 Lincoln cent error lies in its ability to surprise and captivate. Even now, its exact origins remain partly shrouded in mystery, fueling speculation and driving its desirability among collectors. Today, high-grade examples of this coin fetch between $40,000 and $108,000 at auction, a testament to its rarity and the enduring fascination with the unexpected twists of numismatic history. In 1979, the Jefferson nickel had already established itself as a quiet workhorse of American coinage. Introduced in 1938, this 5-cent piece bore the left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson, designed by Felix Schlag, and the reverse featured his Virginia home, Monticello. That year, the U.S. Mint continued churning out millions of these coins at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. On the surface, it was business as usual, routine, mechanical, and unremarkable. Yet, within this year's production, something went awry, something small, subtle, but profound. At the time, the minting process was under pressure. Costs were rising, demand was high, and the mint had begun experimenting with extending the lifespan of its coin dies. Efficiency was key, and quality control was trusted to machines more than the eyes of individual inspectors. It was a time when perfection gave way to production speed, and somewhere between these priorities, a single coin rolled off the line, not like the rest. One that bore an error that would lay hidden for decades. For years, that coin traveled unnoticed, through cash registers, parking meters, soda machines, and pocket change. Until, one day in Ohio, it found itself under the eye of Gerald Langston, a retired postal worker and amateur numismatist with a passion for nickels. Gerald spent his evenings combing through rolls of coins, eyes trained for anomalies that most would overlook. That winter, at his desk surrounded by magnifiers and coin sleeves, he opened a roll of 1979 Jefferson nickels. What he found would ripple through the numismatic world. He picked it up casually at first, just another coin. But something in the reverse caught his attention. The Monticello building, normally neat and symmetrical, looked off. The steps seemed to blend into one another. There was a ghosted impression beneath the legend, "E pluribus unum." Intrigued, Gerald examined the coin under magnification. The doubling was unmistakable, not random like damage, not sloppy like machine strikes. It was precise, nearly artistic. The design elements appeared as though the coin had been struck twice, ever so slightly misaligned. Gerald felt his pulse rise. He carefully compared it to standard 1979 nickels. The differences were undeniable. Still, he wondered, had he found a true double die? Or was this just die fatigue? He scoured the rest of the roll. 2 more coins bore similar characteristics, less pronounced but consistent. Excitement turned to obsession. He cross-referenced minting error catalogs, searched online archives, even reached out to former mint employees. But there were no official records of a major double die for that year's nickel. The coin was sent to a professional grading service. When it returned, the label read, 1979 5C reverse doubling MS65. Certified. Real. A piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. Gerald knew then that this wasn't just personal, it was historical. What started as a quiet hobby had turned into a potential revelation. Word spread slowly but steadily. Online coin forums lit up with speculation. Dealers began checking their inventory. Auction listings grew, and terminology emerged. Ghost steps, double Monticello, shadow unum. Some dismissed the anomaly as common die deterioration. But others, especially error specialists, took notice. The doubling didn't match traditional die wear. It was too crisp, too consistent. It was beginning to look like the product of flawed die design or experimental minting techniques. And then came the turning point. A collector in Arizona found a similar 1979 nickel, except his bore an even more dramatic error. The doubling on the reverse practically mirrored the design, a clear second strike, yet perfectly aligned. When his coin went to auction, it sold for $2,400. Then another surfaced in near mint condition, hammering at $3,100. A coin that once cost 5 cents was now fetching thousands. Gerald, watching the momentum build, held tight to his collection. He had 5 confirmed specimens, each with slight variances. Some displayed doubling along the rim lettering, others in the architectural lines of Monticello. Collectors began to whisper theories. Was this the result of a rogue die left in service too long? Or, more intriguingly, was it tied to an experimental run the mint had never publicly acknowledged, That theory gained traction when a numismatic researcher uncovered an internal memo dated March 1979 from the Philadelphia Mint. The document referenced a trial run involving prolonged die use and testing tolerance thresholds for non-precious metal denominations. It didn't mention Jefferson nickels by name, but it was enough. The pieces began to fall into place. The flawed strikes weren't random. They were potentially part of a deliberate experiment, and a few coins slipped into circulation unintentionally. This revelation transformed perception. These nickels were no longer just flawed, they were secrets. Tangible pieces of a behind-the-scenes mint trial, lost to time and bureaucracy, only to reemerge through the curiosity of a lone collector. Gerald's theory, once whispered, was now considered plausible. The doubling, if linked to a testing phase, might be the result of an unrecorded die endurance experiment. That would mean the coins were never meant to be released, making every surviving specimen not only an error, but a breach in procedure. As the story evolved, so did the coin's value. Lower-grade examples with visible doubling sold for a few $100s. Mid-grade specimens, slabbed and authenticated, climbed past $1,000. High-grade coins, those with pronounced doubling and minimal wear, commanded figures north of $5,000. And the truly exceptional, those with the cleanest ghost impressions and confirmed pedigree, began appearing in elite collections, their values surpassing $8,000. But then, the twist. A coin dealer in North Carolina posted a listing of a 1979 Jefferson nickel with striking reverse doubling, but unlike others, this coin bore a proof-like finish. It had not been listed as a proof coin, yet it bore reflective fields and sharply defined details. Suspicion grew. How had this coin achieved that appearance? It turned out the coin had been struck with a fresh die, most likely one of the early test dies used in the experimental batch before we're set in. The possibility emerged. Some of these errors may not only be test strikes but test proofs. If confirmed, it would elevate them into a new class of rarity altogether. Pre-release test proofs accidentally circulated. The numismatic world was stunned. No official proof versions of the 1979 nickel had ever been acknowledged with these errors. If real, this would represent the pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. Authentication was slow and strict. But when one of these proof-like specimens received a top-tier grading and the error was confirmed, its sale at auction stunned the room. Final hammer price, $12,500. Gerald, ever humble, watched from afar. He had no proof-like versions in his stash, but he didn't care. To him, the real treasure wasn't just the coins. It was the journey, the questions, the sleuthing, the rediscovery of something forgotten. A story buried beneath layers of copper and nickel, finally uncovered not by accident, but through persistence. Today, the 1979 Jefferson nickel error sits in a strange space between the known and the unknown. The Mint has yet to confirm the nature of the doubling or admit to the testing procedures from which these coins may have come. The ambiguity only adds to their allure. Each example, whether minor or dramatic, carries with it a whisper of conspiracy, of history, of hidden processes behind closed doors. Collectors across the country continue to search, hoping to find one of their own. Some dig through old jars and childhood collections. Others buy rolls from banks, searching for that glint of distortion that could turn 5 cents into thousands. The thrill lies not just in the money, but in the myth. In knowing that the next great discovery might still be out there, silent, unassuming, waiting in a pocket or drawer. And for Gerald Langston, the man who first saw what others missed, the story has never been about profit. It's about proof that even the most ordinary objects can hide extraordinary truths. All it takes is the right pair of eyes, and the patience to look a little closer. In 1982, the United States Mint was operating under a haze of pressure. Inflation had driven up the cost of raw materials, and every coin denomination, from pennies to quarters, was undergoing changes. Copper prices fluctuated, nickel demand surged, and the Mint's attention had turned to cost efficiency above all else. Amidst this atmosphere, machines at the Denver Mint continued their relentless pace, striking Roosevelt dimes by the millions. Designed by John R. Sennick, these dimes bore the familiar left-facing profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. They were small, silver-colored, and routinely overlooked in favor of more valuable coins. But within this year's output, something crept past the precision of dies and quality control, an error subtle enough to escape detection, but striking enough to captivate collectors decades later. The Roosevelt dime had long been a symbol of durability and honor. First introduced in 1946, it commemorated the president who led America through the Great Depression and World War II, and who founded the March of Dimes. Its obverse and reverse had remained relatively unchanged for decades. But in 1982, the world behind the scenes at the Mint was shifting. Budget constraints led to an increased reliance on existing dies and an urgency to extend their usage beyond normal thresholds. This practice, while efficient, left room for mistakes. One such mistake would travel silently through commerce for years before its secrets unraveled. A dime, minted in Denver, struck onto a planchet, but without something crucial. No mint mark. The small D that should have been punched below the ear vanished. In Southern California, a retired aerospace technician named Mark Ellison had taken up coin collecting as a hobby to occupy his time. He had no intention of becoming a serious numismatist. His days were slow and quiet, filled with sorting coins from bank rolls, mostly dimes and quarters. He had an eye for detail, refined from years of inspecting aircraft components for flaws. One spring afternoon, he opened a roll of dimes, all dated 1982. The coins slid into his palm like silver rain. He inspected them one by one, mechanically, until something halted him. A 1982 Roosevelt dime. Denver issue. But the D was gone. He rubbed the surface gently, thinking it might be obscured by dirt. But the space beneath the date was smooth, clean. No sign of tampering, no worn edges. Just absence. Mark's experience taught him that true errors are rarely dramatic. They don't scream for attention, they whisper. And this coin whispered something peculiar. He pulled out his magnifying glass, scanned every curve, every detail. The strike looked solid. The rest of the coin was crisp. This wasn't a worn-out coin, nor a casual factory defect. It was something else. At first, he assumed it might have come from the Philadelphia Mint. After all, dimes struck in Philadelphia during the era often lacked a mint mark. But the Mint had begun using the P mark starting in 1980. Every 1982 dime without a mark should have been from Philadelphia, unless it bore characteristics unique to Denver. He took out his digital scale. The weight was precise, matching the copper-nickel-clad composition. Then came the edge, reeded, consistent. But the strike? It matched other 1982 D dimes in everything except one. The coin was sent to a grading service. Weeks passed. When the slab returned, the label read, 1982 D Roosevelt dime missing mint mark MS64. The error was official. And Mark's quiet world suddenly roared with interest. Collectors began investigating. Could this be a one-off? A fluke? Or was there more beneath the surface? Forums and numismatic circles buzzed with speculation. Some theorized that the mint mark punch had failed or had been skipped during production. Others suggested a filled die, where grease or debris had obscured the mint mark during striking. But something didn't sit right with that explanation. The coin's field was too smooth, too clean. Over time, more examples emerged, nearly identical in error. They were all 1982 D Roosevelt dimes with no mint mark. And they weren't worn. They weren't mangled. They were beautiful. Mark, now at the center of attention, became an unlikely authority on the coin. His original find sparked a quest across the country. Collectors dug through jars, bank rolls, even old vending machines. The search was on. As more specimens were authenticated, the coin's value began to climb. At first, it was modest. A curious dime sold for $200, then $450. By the following year, a near-mint example fetched $1,200 at auction. But the real moment came when a pristine MS67 specimen, showing full bands on the torch reverse, sold for an astonishing $10,500. Suddenly, this wasn't just a coin. It was a phenomenon. The mystery deepened when a mint document surfaced, released under the Freedom of Information Act. It referenced a machine malfunction in Denver during mid-1982 involving mint-mark application. While it didn't directly confirm the error, it lent credibility to the theory that a die escaped into production without its mint-mark properly applied. Whether this was due to oversight, damage, or scheduling urgency, no one could say for certain. But the idea that the coin was the product of internal mint procedure failure only added to its lore. Mark continued collecting. He now specialized in dime errors, particularly Roosevelt varieties. He eventually uncovered 3 more 1982 no mint mark dimes in circulation. He kept the first, the coin that started it all, as his personal treasure. The rest he sold, using the funds to build his collection and fund his research. The error didn't just captivate seasoned collectors, it pulled in new ones. Teenagers, casual hobbyists, retired veterans, all began hunting for the missing D. Its rarity, combined with the familiar appearance of a Roosevelt dime, made it a democratic mystery. Anyone could stumble upon one. It didn't require an expensive expedition or rare insider knowledge. Just a little luck and attention to detail. Then the twist. In late 2018, a collector in Colorado found what appeared to be a 1982 D dime, again without the mint mark, but this one was struck on a copper planchet. The color was off, the weight lighter. Testing confirmed that the planchet was not clad. Somehow, a copper core, meant for a penny, had been used. It was an error within an error, a ghost from the transition days when the mint experimented with planchet compositions during metal shortages. The coin went to auction with great anticipation. Bidding was fierce. Some claimed it was a fake, others argued its authenticity based on lab testing and strike clarity. It sold for $18,750. This single coin rewrote what collectors thought was possible for the 1982 D no mint mark variety. If copper strikes existed, how many were out there? And what were they worth? Price trends accelerated. By 2020, standard no mint mark 1982 D dimes in average mint state were selling between $1,000 and $3,500. The highest graded examples reached 5 figures. But it wasn't just about money. It was about the enigma, the story, the gap in records, the unanswered questions from a mint that had never formally acknowledged the error in detail. Mark Ellison's story was even featured in a numismatic documentary. He recounted the quiet thrill of that moment at his desk, the cold metal coin sliding into his palm like a secret passed down through time. He spoke not of riches, but of purpose, the feeling that, even in retirement, he had uncovered a piece of history that no one else had noticed. Today, the 1982 D Roosevelt dime with no mint mark remains one of the most captivating modern errors in American coinage. Its origin is still debated. Its supply is uncertain. Some experts estimate that fewer than 200 specimens exist in collectible condition. Others believe the number is far lower. But regardless of total mintage, its place in numismatic lore is secure. Collectors continue to search rolls, often in vain. Every 1982 dime they find raises the same question: is it ordinary, or is it one of them? The ones that slip through, unnoticed. The ones that hold value far beyond 10 cents. The ones that carry a mystery forged in a factory too busy to realize it was minting a legend. And while Mark has long since stopped selling his finds, he remains a name whispered at coin shows, his story a testament to how even the most unassuming objects, lost in change jars, buried in glove compartments, can hold untold worth. In 1994, the United States Mint was steadily producing Washington quarters across 3 key facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. These coins, bearing the stoic profile of George Washington on the obverse and the familiar eagle-clad reverse, had changed little since their debut in 1932. Most Americans handled them daily without a second thought, unaware of how closely these coins reflected a delicate choreography between design, die striking, and quality control. What was supposed to be routine turned into something altogether different within a single production cycle, one quiet, unnoticed slip that would alter the fate of a few quarters forever. The coin in question had no reason to attract attention at first. It rolled out of minting machines like the rest, bearing its year, 1994, and the inscriptions "I in God We Trust" and "Liberty" crisply arranged along the obverse. From the Denver Mint, it entered the monetary bloodstream, possibly bundled in bank rolls or quietly deposited into circulation via armored trucks. It was, by all appearances, normal. Yet within a few short years, whispers began to surface in niche coin circles. Whispers about a quarter that didn't behave like the others. The rumors weren't about damage or wear. They centered on something much stranger. A quarter that appeared to be double-struck. Another that seemed to be off-center. And others, still, with weakly struck images, distorted or improperly aligned text, and even missing clad layers. Each detail might have been dismissed individually, but together, they created a puzzle no one could quite piece together. At least not yet. In a small town in Iowa, a longtime collector named Diane Cole had taken to her basement hobby room after retirement. Her fascination with coins had begun with statehood quarters, but her curiosity evolved as she began purchasing rolls from banks and sorting them one by one. It was never about finding treasure. It was about the thrill of discovery. One gray afternoon, she broke open a tightly wrapped roll labeled 1994D. The quarter spilled onto the desk, dull from wear but orderly. She reached for one. Then froze. Something was off. The quarter was thicker than the others. The reeded edge looked uneven. And most notably, Washington's bust seemed slightly distorted, as if shifted to the right. Diane rotated the coin under a desk lamp. The reverse revealed something even more baffling. Part of the eagle's left wing was missing. Or more accurately, it had never been struck. There were no abrasions, no smoothing. It was just blank. A void in place of detail. Her pulse quickened. She placed it under her loupe, then weighed it on her digital scale. The number startled her. It was heavier than expected. She weighed another quarter for comparison. The anomaly persisted. The coin looked like a standard quarter, but clearly wasn't. Not entirely. She posted photos online, initially met with skepticism. Others assumed postman damage. But one user suggested a double planchet strike, an extremely rare occurrence where two blanks are fed into the press simultaneously, or where one coin overlaps another during striking. Another mentioned an embonded clad layer, which could explain the added thickness. More collectors chimed in, intrigued by the visible shifts in design and weight discrepancy. The photos caught the attention of a seasoned grader who offered to inspect it in person. Diane shipped the coin with cautious hope. Weeks later, a slab arrived bearing the final assessment. 1994D Washington quarter, double struck on split planchet, 58 Australian dollars. The grading report described the coin's story in cold terms, but the implications were electrifying. It wasn't just a double strike. It was struck on a damaged planchet that had split mid-production, creating a warped and partially unstruck surface. What this meant, no one could say with certainty. Was it an isolated case? Or did it belong to a series of coins born from the same die batch? Diane dug into records, online archives, and auction listings. As she dug deeper, more oddities surfaced. A collector in Arizona reported a 1994D quarter with extreme off-center features. Only 70% of the coin bore any image. Another in Minnesota had found a 1994 quarter missing its outer nickel layer, exposing the raw copper core beneath. A rare occurrence, typically caused by improperly bonded clad layers or planchet defects. What bound them all together wasn't just the date. It was the location. Every odd quarter bore the Denver Mint mark. That was the clue. By 1995, error enthusiasts had mapped enough anomalies to conclude that a fault had occurred within the Denver facility's quarter production during part of the 1994 run. Perhaps a faulty planchet feeder. Perhaps worn dies. Perhaps overpressure in the striking press. The exact cause remained uncertain, but the evidence was mounting. The errors weren't singular. They were part of a pattern. A small, chaotic burst of imperfection within an otherwise disciplined machine. As auction houses caught wind, the value of these errors surged. Diane's quarter, purchased for 25 cents, sold at auction for $4,800. Another with dramatic off-center features went for $6,100. A coin with both a misaligned die and a broad strike pushed the bar higher still, $8,250. But the pinnacle came when a dual error piece, featuring both a partial collar and a split planchet reached $11,750 in a competitive private auction. The story attracted national media, not as a headline, but as a curiosity buried in hobby segments and blogs. Articles titled, "The $10,000 quarter you could have in your pocket," or "Minting Mistake Turns Spare Change into Gold," painted the tale in wonder and speculation. But seasoned collectors knew the truth ran deeper than price. These coins weren't valuable because of hype. They were valuable because they revealed an unseen chapter in U.S. mint operations. And then came the twist. A coin dealer in Nevada purchased an estate lot containing hundreds of circulated quarters. He noticed one quarter that felt slick in hand, slightly smoother, slightly glossier. When he looked closer, he realized it was struck not on a standard quarter planchet, but on a blank intended for a foreign coin. The weight was off by just enough to raise questions. Tests revealed that the planchet matched those used for 10 peso coins minted by the U.S. under a contract with a Central American nation. Somehow, in 1994, a foreign blank had entered domestic production and received a Washington quarter design. The coin was authenticated, and its backstory confirmed. It became the first known 1994 Washington quarter struck on a foreign planchet. The auction world erupted. The sale was quick, quiet, and fierce. Final bid, $21,000. This revelation reignited interest in all things 1994. Coin clubs began issuing bulletins encouraging members to check their change. Grading companies began keeping more detailed logs of error submissions for that year. Theories grew. Could there be more foreign strikes? Could other mint marks carry hidden variants? The floodgates had opened. And yet, even as the market swelled, a counter-movement formed. Some skeptics claimed the errors were overstated, that the sheer number of coin variations in any given year made 1994 no more special than any other. But the evidence remained stubborn. The range of documented 1994 errors was wider than for other surrounding years. Not because collectors were biased, but because the coins were speaking. Diane Cole, once a hobbyist, became a collector of renown. She published a small guidebook titled, "The 1994 Quarter Error Phenomenon," cataloging every known variety she could verify. Her work was cited in major numismatic circles, and even helped form the foundation of revised grading criteria for off-center and misstruck quarters from the early 90s. One particularly captivating theory she posed was this, that a temporary staffing change at the Denver Mint in mid-1994 led to increased errors. Whether due to lack of training, overloaded schedules, or failing machinery, something had compromised quality control for a brief but significant window. While unconfirmed, the theory aligned with production records showing higher than usual machine downtime and coin rejections that year. To this day, the full number of 1994 Washington quarter errors remains unknown. But collectors continue to find them, each one a silent echo from a flawed process that no one caught in time. Their appearances are unpredictable. A faint doubling here, a broad strike there. Sometimes, a collar that slipped. Or a partial image that hints at the chaos behind the press. And it's not just collectors who keep looking. Dealers routinely check bulk lots. Bank tellers set aside suspicious coins. Even casual observers, once they've heard the story, find themselves flipping over every quarter they touch, just in case. Because in the world of coin errors, the extraordinary hides in the ordinary. A quarter spent on a vending machine soda may be worth a week's wages. A forgotten coin jar may house a mistake worth thousands. And in the case of the 1994 Washington quarter, a single split-second misstep by a machine in Denver became a legacy of intrigue, value, and human curiosity. The 1994 Washington quarter isn't remembered just for what it looks like, but for what it represents. A reminder that perfection, while noble, is rarely as interesting as imperfection. That even the most standardized systems, engraved in metal and forged by pressure, can still create something unexpected, something flawed, something unforgettable. And while the average 1994 quarter is worth exactly 25 cents, those that bear the scars of the mint's silent blunder have been known to fetch between $6,000 and $15,000, some even higher. The most mysterious of all, the foreign planchet strike, remains unmatched at a staggering $21,000.